We can work on how to actually negotiate, but none of that works without these three things. And these are all sort of mindset issues because that's such a key part of the negotiation phase. Negotiating fees can be a really scary and daunting conversation for recruiters. You've done all of the hard work to win that client over and get them to the point where you're negotiating fees and they're willing to work with you, and you don't want to mess it up. You want to get the deal done. But you also want to get high fees, but trying to push for high fees might scare the client off. It might break the deal, and all of that hard work is gone, and your pipeline is really dry again, and you're not proving that you can do the job. So it's a really crucial conversation to have, yet we're never taught how to actually do it. We're never taught how to navigate uh, a negotiation with fees with clients, which is baffling, really, considering it's so important. So we just go in with the mindset of let's get this deal done, let's get a client on board. A client at 15% is better than no client at all. But a client base full of 15 percenters isn't great. And I'd rather have a couple of clients at 20 to 25% than 15 to 20 who are like 10 to 15%. Because a lot of the time you're going to be running around, working really hard, and they don't really value what you're doing. It drops out. You're not getting much money for it. At least for those clients that have got the 20 to 25%, they really are bought into you and your service and what you're doing. So before we start a negotiation, there's three main things that we really need to think about. And these three things, they pop up all the time when I talk to recruiters about negotiation. When they really want to work on negotiation and get high fees, these are the three things that we work on. We can work on how to actually negotiate, but none of that works without these three things. And these are all sort of mindset issues because that's such a key part of the negotiation phase. So I won't be talking about negotiation tactics and how to actually navigate it because that is almost like a follow-up video on its own. We're going to focus on the mindset before you go into a negotiation. So the three things that always pop up and always hold recruiters back from getting good fees are to do with kind of understanding what you actually do for a client. What is the service that you provide? Now, most recruiters, when you ask the question, what do you do, will say something along the lines of provide candidates for clients' vacancies and manage the process until the person starts or the job is filled or closed. And yes, that is what you do, but it's not the service you provide, right? The service you provide is solving problems, overcoming challenges, and educating your client because they could find somebody for a vacancy. There's no real value there. Like anyone can do that. Anyone can get LinkedIn, can get CV Library or Reed or Total Jobs or any of these job boards. They can get a database and they can go and they can do it. Anybody can do that. They could hire an internal talent acquisition team, right? Which most companies have now, but they could hire somebody like that to do that. But recruitment is still thriving. You may not feel it, but it is. It's still a massive industry. There's still lots of deals being done all the time. And it's not because we fill vacancies. That's the transactional recruiter that we talk of all the time. They're just filling roles. A consultative recruiter does far more than that. We're embedded in the industry. We know all the movers and shakers. We're talking with different clients. So we're talking with their competitors. We're talking with people who do adjacent things that are seeing slightly different shifts that could help them. We're talking with every single candidate in the market that we can find. We're understanding the challenges that the client are having. We're understanding the challenges that the candidates are having, and we can merge them together. We can kind of create this environment where both are overcoming their challenges at the same time. We can educate the client on how they can position themselves better to be an employer of choice, to be the kind of place where all these candidates want to work. We don't want people to need a job and go there. We want them to actually really want to work at that client, and we can help them and educate them and shape them into a company where people want to go there. We can use all the benchmarking data, so we can talk about companies that we've worked with recently on similar roles. We can tell them about the process that happened there, what the challenges were, how we overcame it, all that sort of stuff, so they can create this great environment for candidates to come into. We can help them streamline their process, because you've probably worked with clients or spoken to clients or heard of stories where people have like 5 to 7 stage interview processes, and then they're wondering why they can't find people. So we can help them streamline their interview process and the hiring process to make sure that it's efficient and effective, and they are finding the right people and they're not losing them because they've got so many different tasks to do and so many interviews to go to, and they can never get the time off, and they just can't be bothered because they don't see the benefit of it, right? So then they're left with the people that are just desperate and need a job. So that is the service that we provide. It's far more than just filling a job. Now, after that, we then need to start focusing on something that's quite tough to focus on. It's quite tough to overcome this. But most recruiters, the second thing they need to work on is the belief that they are worth a high fee. Because they don't really understand that first point, right? They don't really understand the value that they add to a client. So they don't really understand why a client would pay them to do that. They don't have the confidence that they are worth 25%, which can be quite a lot of money. If you're working big roles, if you're working a 60K role, that's a 15K fee right there, which would be lovely. For most people, that is their target for the month done in one vacancy. So they struggle to comprehend the fact that they are worth it and their service is worth it, because they don't fully understand it. They may think they fully understand it, but they don't fully understand it so much that they believe that they are worth it and that they can really help a client out. And without that confidence and that belief, when you deliver your terms, it just doesn't come across the same way, because they can pick up and they can sense that you don't believe it and that you're nervous about saying the fee. And so they latch onto that weakness and they pull you down. So the client, the recruiter that doesn't really believe in their service will typically say, "Oh, our standard terms are 25%. But we can negotiate on that." But somebody who truly believes their value will just come in and say, "We charge 25%." And you can see the difference in that. The first one, automatically, if you're the client there, you can pull them down because they're a bit hesitant, they're a bit shaky about delivering 25%. Like, "Oh, our standard fees are 25%." There's an unsure nature about that, right? So you're going to be like, "Okay, I can pull them down." And then they follow up with, "They are negotiable." Excellent. Well, I'm definitely not paying 25% then. Let's go in. We're going to go for that. Or they'll say, standard fees are 25%, but most people pay around 15%. Perfect. Well, I'll take 15 then. I might even try and knock it down a little bit more. Whereas the one where it's we charge 25%, there's confidence, and it's like, okay, cool, they do this all the time. They truly believe that they're worth it. They may have some questions about that, but they're not thinking automatically, I'm going to be able to get them down here. They're going to think, God, they've got confidence around that. They must charge 25% to everybody. I might try and get them down a little bit because that's quite a lot of money. But they're not thinking, well, I'm going to get them down to 15%, maybe 10% here. They're kind of thinking more, they might get to 20% if they're going to negotiate down. But the confidence that you've delivered it with makes them think, actually, you do charge 25% and you do it regularly because you've got the confidence about it. And then the third part we need to focus on is kind of getting more into the how you actually do a negotiation. But we need to first focus on the mindset part of it. And the third part is all about not focusing on the percentage, because the amount of times I talk to recruiters about the percentage they've just agreed, and they don't really understand how percentages work. They don't really think about actually how much is 15% and how much is 25%, and what's the difference that they've just thrown away there. So with that, right, let's take a 60k salary. 25% of a 60k salary is £15,000. 10% salary, 10% fee is 6,000. So 15%, you're looking at £9,000 there, right? There's a big difference between a 15k fee and a 9k fee. And you've just negotiated yourself down from that straight away. So if you think of if your target is £10,000 a month or £15,000 a month, which is quite common, agreeing 25% fees, even 20% fees, will get you to that target, right? 15%, you're still then going to have to make another placement because you're going to fall maybe £1,000 shy, right? And you've got to go all that stress again just to get that £1,000, and you're scratching and you're fighting to try and get that from somewhere. Just by agreeing better fees and having those conversations and not just thinking of a percentage is going to make the difference, because you're going to think, actually, 25%, that's 15k fee. 15%, that's a 9k fee. That's not my target. If I agree this 25%, that is my target done for the month with this one placement. You're going to fight for that a little bit more than you are going to just accept the 15k, right? So let's start thinking about actual fee numbers rather than percentages, because a percentage is just a number, it's a throwaway thing, right? And then the second part of this is when we are negotiating, everyone just automatically focuses on the fee. They focus on what fee they're going to get. And not all fees are created equal, right? So I'm not saying never agree a 15% fee ever again, but context has a lot to play with it. So there's other things you can negotiate on around fee to try and get the client to come up. So you can add in longer payment terms, you can add in a rebate system or a better rebate structure, you can put in a refill. There's other things you can add in around it. But then if you're going to come down, you need to do the opposite. You need to take things away. So take away the rebate, take away the refill, shorten the payment terms, gain exclusivity. Maybe it's even, well, I want direct conversation with the hiring managers. I don't want to have to go through HR all the time, because ultimately it's the HR manager that's going to be making the decision. So I want to be able to speak to the HR manager. So there's other things we can play in there. So if you're getting a 15% fee, but you're getting direct conversation with the hiring manager, you've shortened the payment terms, and there's no rebate or refill structure in there, that is much better than the 15% where everybody's just kind of agreeing to 15% and then not getting any hiring manager contact. They've still got the full rebate structure in there and a refill, and the payment terms are still 30 days, right? So there's context. So don't just automatically think, oh, I'd have to get 25% with everything. You don't, but that's the gold standard. That's where we're aiming. And let's start thinking about different things that we can throw in or take out when we're doing negotiations. So we're not just focusing on money, because some things make the deal a little bit sweeter. Because if you're doing a 15% fee and there's no rebate, you're more likely to work that, because if it doesn't work out, you don't have to pay any of the money back. It's obvious. Or could they do retained? Could you add a little bit of a discount if they go retained? Would you say go to 20% if they're going to do a retained fee? They're going to pay you some money up front for your time, because that's the benefit of the retained, right? You're working for them. They're focusing on you and you only. They haven't got other recruiters they're talking to. So you can take a little bit of a drop in fee because you know they're dedicated to you and you are the only person working that role, and you've already got money up front. You've got a guaranteed sure thing. That might be that extra bit of money that you needed to hit target. So let's start thinking about these different changes in mindset that we can do before we start thinking, how do we actually negotiate? Because I could teach you all of that, but without the mindset shift, it's not going to work. So we need to focus on these three things first before we then start to think about actually how do we navigate a terms negotiation